On. Welcome. It's Wednesday. It's Pontificators night. How is everyone? So we're a little short-staffed today, but I assure you, it's just a moment in time. It's just a moment in time. So we have Comic Book Bob, as always. Bob rocks. What are you drinking there, Bob? What is that?
This is some Bullet.
Very good, very good. And then we have our special guest, our star of the hour, which is Andy Smith. I've known Andy for a while. I think we even worked on different projects down the line. Mostly Marvel, I think. How are you doing, my friend? You got a new Indiegogo going.
Yeah, man, I'm doing good. I appreciate you having me on. Yeah, we were together in the late 90s at Marvel. Then there was one thing at DC. I helped out on an issue of The Flash that you inked.
That's right.
So maybe something else. I don't remember. It was a long time ago. But yeah, man, I'm doing
an X-Men. I think it was probably an X-Men project that we worked on.
Yeah, it was an X-Men thing. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we got Chester gray screen.
I gotta turn the camera on. So yeah. How you doing, Art?
So, Chester, have you met Andy Smith yet?
I have not met Andy Smith. Hello, Andy Smith.
Hey, man, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man.
Doesn't it sound like it's a made-up name whenever you go, oh, it's Andy Smith? It's like,
you can hide in a crowd pretty easy. That's nice.
Yeah. No one has the name Smith or Jones or something. It's too easy. Yeah. So what we're going to do, Chester, is we're going to help get some eyes on Andy's new book, which is The First Man.
Oh, nice. All
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yup.
Yup.
So,
Is that what you said, Bob?
Yup.
What's your book about,
What
Andy?
up, yo?
It's oh man, my voice. It's basic classic superhero. First Man is kind of a throwback mix of yes, it is. It is the Andy Smith Ominous Press, yes. Throwback of a mix of like Captain Marvel, the Jim Starlin Captain Marvel, where he would switch places with Rick Jones. And little Shazam, same thing, because Billy Batson and Shazam, because First Man is actually Apollo. Apollo is this essence that goes into the body of a college kid named Luke Henry, and Luke Henry becomes First Man, and then he soon realizes that Apollo is in his head chatting with him, kind of like another thing like Firestorm when is it Ronnie Raymond in Firestorm?
Yeah, it was Ronnie Raymond, yeah.
Yeah, and then Professor whatever, I can't remember the professor's name, but would talk to him and stuff. And then there's the cosmic bent to it, because basically there's these 10 essences spread throughout the galaxies, and the big baddie, whose name is Monarch, wants to collect all of them from individual hosts that they inhabit. And then once he gains all 10, he's basically, I guess you could say unbeatable, the ultimate threat. And he tracks down this last one to Earth. And then a woman in the back, whose name is Penumbra, she has a specific tie to the essence that is taken over, or not taken over, but inhabited the college student. So she kind of plays a part in it as well. It's kind of, I like to say it's like a Silver Age comic. It's just fun. It's fun. At least I think it's fun. It's action packed. When I grew up reading books in the 80s and stuff, it seemed that there's like this formula where the books were 21 pages before they went to 20. They were 21. It seemed formulaic in the standpoint of you had like a third of the book of like character stuff with the real person, a third of the book of subplot type stuff, and then a third of the book action, And that's kind of how I tried to pace this story out. Except this is 64 page book, and it's going to be square bound, not stapled. You can see my love for the Marvel Universe from the 80s.
I was just going to
Characters-
say that. It looks like an entry to the Marvel Universe.
Yeah, handbook of the Marvel Universe. Yeah, we
That's
were
what it
talking
looks
about
like,
that.
yeah.
It's exactly what
It's-
it looks like.
It's got good
Exact-
design.
Yeah. And the thing that
So,
I love about this though is well, we were was talking to Andy about this on Saturday. He had that book that he did called Drawing Dynamic Comics.
Yeah,
It was a how to draw book, and that's where I first saw these characters a long time ago, and I thought that's what that was originally where they came from. But one of the cool things is that for that book he had all these different artists do their own draw this character in their style to show the different styles of the different artists. And he's got an extra book that you can get with this. It's one of the add-ons you can get for this that has all that art from all those different artists, man, and it's really dope.
Which tier is that?
it's called well, the first tier is basically the First Man collection, because it's my book. It's the book with my cover, the book with Art Sears variant cover, and then what Bob is talking about is the program book, which is 40 pages and will be, regular staple. And that has, I think it's going to have about 14 to 15 guest artists, which are examples at the bottom of the page showing their take on First Man. And then the rest of that book is going to be layouts and pencils, behind the scenes stuff, making of type thing.
Yeah, there it is right there. I mean, that's like a who's who of friggin' artists, man.
Who's I don't know that guy.
Yeah. Some new guy, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, my God, like Adam Hughes, Brian Hitch, Mike Zeck, Kevin Nolan, J. Scott Campbell, Brandon Peterson, Bart Sears, George Perez.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God,
Jesus, dude,
that's what I'm saying, man. I'm excited for this thing.
Most of those were published, like Bob said, in my original How to Draw book, in a specific section about style and different artist styles. But I pretty much emailed everybody saying, look, I'm going to be doing this campaign. Can I reuse your art? Because unless you bought that How to Draw book, these have never been seen. And like I said, I've got more. So they were all kind enough and said, yeah, go ahead. You've already got
how long you been working on this character?
What's that?
How long have you been working on this character?
I mean, I created First Man, the main character, back when I was a kid. Like 13 years old. In fact, in the How to Draw book, there's a drawing of the original drawing of First Man I did from when I was like 13. So he's always been in the back of my mind rolling around. And then in 97, I did one issue of First Man through Image Comics, and it said to be continued. So it's just taken me 23 years, but I'm finally continuing it to finish the story.
It looks great. It looks fantastic. So it's a 64-page book. So is it going to be in like a graphic novel format, or is it going to be?
Yeah, it's going to be square bound.
Square bound.
Is that what you did with Black and White?
Yeah, I did that with Chrono Mechanics as well. I did those as stretch goals though. So I originally started them as like saddle stitch or the stapled spine, and then we increased pages, and then we square bound and put the deluxe cover up on it. Yeah,
see, I already had it to that page count, and I was like, I'll just go with square bound right out of the gate. Then,
Andy, you were saying 21 pages. I never remember a 21-page format. I always remember 22 pages.
Maybe it was 22. I know comics started back, in the 70s. They were like 17 pages for a while. You're right. I think it went to 22.
I was going to say, I was like, are you sure about 21?
Yeah. No, it's definitely 22.
It has to end on an even. It has to end on an even number, right?
Yeah. That's why
it should be 52. Damn artists, lazy asses.
No, but and then eventually it got dropped down to, what was it, 18 now is the average?
Is it 18? Because
I think it's 18 now.
Yeah, when I left DC, it was 20 pages.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Yeah, I think it's like 16 pages of story and then like 4 pages of inserts and ads and stuff.
Well, that's an interesting point. I'd actually like to ask a question on if I could. Now, artist, Andy's an artist. I'm assuming, Andy, you've been working in the industry for a while.
30
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, all right, with awesome. So, in your time doing that, because I've heard some comments from people, and I'm not an artist, so I don't know, but um, has the art become more detailed and more difficult these days, and thus, it make a necessity to lower the page count so that you can get a consistent time frame out on month basis?
I wouldn't be surprised if that's part of the reason they lowered the page count. But I will say, I was talking to somebody about this the other day that, and I think Art will attest to this. Back in the 70s, guys like John Buscema and Gil Kane and John Romita Sr. and, just that time period, those guys had to jam out like 3 pages a day of pencils, if not more.
Yeah.
And the inker really had a job to do,
Mhm.
Whereas when I got into business in 91, it started to become this slow shift to where pencilers got a lot tighter and a lot tighter. And that takes a lot more time to draw,
It started shifting over. I noticed where it was always the norm where if a penciler could do 1 page, an inker was expected to do 2 pages a day. So the inker was always expected to double the output of whatever or whoever he was working with. So that was always kind of the standard. And then the other was that the inker penciler worked more as a team in the earlier days. So I predate you a little bit, Andy, but not much.
Yeah.
And so what would happen is you would have guys that would basically they were like the pencil was responsible for just like composition, storytelling, things like that, but not necessarily details. So that was for an embellisher or inker. Like if you notice a lot of those old comics, like what Andy was talking about in the 70s and stuff, they were embellishers. So inkers had like different credits even. They were embellishers. So they would kind of finish the book, and bring a look to it. And so where I started seeing it shift is when like that whole paradigm of like what ended up becoming Image Comics. It became more of a penciler's medium than a team medium. So the penciler was more dictating terms to the rest of the creative people that were working on the book. So they would not so much micromanage, is the only word I can think of right now, but they would kind of oversee, the penciling and the coloring and stuff like that. They were a lot more involved with all the process. And then Andy, I've inked Andy. Andy's pencils are really, really tight. And then penciling started getting really, really tight. And I think it was because pencilers wanted to look a certain way. They didn't want it to be dictated by an inker anymore. They wanted to be able to control their own destinies. And so what you started seeing is like where I started, because, like when Jim Lee, people like that, and even John Byrne had to work with a lot of different inkers. But if you look, there's completely different takes on John Byrne's work, like depending on who was inking him. So, like I don't think pencilers, I think they were kind of getting out of that mode and they were going more towards like something that they could control and that they could dictate a look that they wanted. And I know because I broke in as a penciler and an inker on the same day, actually, for Marvel and DC. I got pencil work at DC and I got ink work at Marvel. So what I noticed is that that there was really more of an assembly line process. And one of the things that broke my heart as a penciler is when inkers didn't get it. I remember reading articles like John Buscema. He hated inkers. Like, it's a necessary evil, but he hated them because they changed stuff, for the better sometimes, but not always. So was that your take, Andy, as well?
Oh yeah, I mean, my first job was inked by Carlos Garzon, and in his day, Carlos worked with Al Williamson, and was really good. But it's just one of those things. I got him towards the end of his career, and even though the pencils were pretty tight for my first gig, he was just kind of like, yeah, I'll just do whatever I want. And it was like, wow. You know, it's funny hearing that about John Buscema, though, because I mean, the thing with John is, with the way his pencils were, it's kind of like, well, I mean, that's what you put down, and John's stuff really had to be interpreted. You know, if you were John Buscema page and I inked it, it would look different. I mean, because of how he pencils. But if you take somebody like, well, like I think Jim's pencils these days, Jim Lee's pencils these days are still tight, but still need to be interpreted.
Yeah, his style has got a lot more sketchy, and he's a lot more open to interpretation now.
Yeah, he's tried to be more artsy. Give him some room, man.
It's I honestly I think Mark Silvestri is the guy that kind of started that sketchy style like that, and a lot of guys are trying and like they're kind of like, you know, following suit with that. But yeah, like his work is a lot more interpretational now.
Yeah, Silvestri is from the John Buscema school, hardcore, man.
Yeah,
like like his early stuff. The amazing thing about Silvestri is, you know, when the West Coast thing started happening, you could see he was bringing in like that West Coast, like Will Spartaccio, Jim Lee stuff that we were doing, and then he was bringing in like the Mike Mignola influences. And man, on Wolverine, you could see like the creativity, like every issue, you could see that guy growing like every month. Like that's one thing that people don't understand, because I get some people, like young people, and they're like, do you have to be fully developed to start comics? I go, no. People love to see you develop every month. As long as you start off relatively good, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They get to see this whole transition. Not everybody does that. Not every comic book artist has that kind of growth. But there's been a few, and Silvestri is one of those guys that you could see him go from like old school Marvel into this like completely different stratosphere.
Yeah, him and Jim both were like that. I mean, you look at Jim's early stuff on Alpha Flight. It looks like someone aping John Byrne.
Yeah. When I was inking Jim in the early days, when I first started, it was Art Adams. Well, it was John Byrne, obviously, the structure and everything. But it went from that to like Barry Windsor Smith. It went Art Adams and then went Barry Windsor Smith.
Yeah. And
I was a big Barry Windsor Smith guy. So when I got on Jim, I was like, yes, like I knew where his head was at. It was great. It was so much fun. Yeah. And you've been quite a bit too, right?
I mean, I have, I'd say maybe 85% of my career I did, but it's only been over a handful of guys. I could probably count the amount of guys I think on one hand, you know.
And one hand, Jim Starlin, hello.
Yeah, Jim's probably the guy I inked more of. Everybody thinks I inked a lot of Bart, which I have, but I inked close to 400 pages of Jim. So, because those graphics were 100 pages each, and we did a 4-issue miniseries and stuff. So, I inked a lot of Jim, and then just, you know, like I inked the Ron Lim job. I inked Daryl Banks for a bit. Keith Giffen on a couple things, which was by far the easiest because I could ink a Keith Giffen page in like 3 hours, and you know, it was just so easy and fun. So yeah, I think I'm trying to think who else. And then, you know, I've helped people out. You know how it is in a studio. You'll pitch in and help. I inked a couple of pages of Kelly Jones and Batman when I shared a studio with John Beatty.
That's cool.
And he was inking Kelly on Batman just for fun. I think I inked the Jackson Geist page and a Dark Horse job John was doing. Some stuff with Steve Butler on Silver Sable because Jim Sanders was in the studio back then to help out. You know, all this non-credited stuff, just like, oh, we're in a studio. I'd like to ink a page of that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think when I was on the X book, I think they just called it Inker X or Inkers X. And then, it was just a jam. Like we would just jam on the same pages even, you know, like sometimes it would be many hands on just one page.
Oh, yeah.
And do you remember, what was it, Krusty Bunkers? That was Adams.
Oh, I love Krusty. There was, you know, you find so much stuff. I found an issue of Power Man before it was Power Man and Iron Fist, it was just Power Man, drawn by Buscema and inked by Krusty Bunkers. And you can see Neil inked almost all the Power Man figures. So seeing Neil ink Sal Buscema was just awesome. Because you can still see Sal, that goes back to the penciling, the looser penciling. Because you can see Sal, but you got this Neil finish on top of Sal. And it's just like,
yeah, that's a point you brought up, Art, was like back in the day, because remember we looked at that stuff that John Byrne did on his website, also that, and I asked you, and I asked you, like, could you ink that? And you're like, oh yeah, because it's a lot looser than he usually does, than his normal finish style. Yeah. So I was like asking, he's like, dude, could you ink that page? And you're like, oh yeah, I could ink that easy.
Dude, I'm such a John Byrne fan. I could probably ink in Carl Kiesel style over John. I could ink in John style over John, and I could probably ink what is his name? Terry Austin style. Oh, yeah. I just from memory, like it was so impactful to me. I could probably just do it. I just go into autopilot and I could probably do that. But I always wanted to ink John Byrne. I never got to ink John Byrne.
Hey, call him up and talk to him, man. Maybe he'll let you do that stuff he did. Those Elseworlds books that he did for X-Men.
I helped out on an issue of Spider-Man that John Beatty was inking back in the day, and I got credit for that one, I think. So yeah, I got the.
You inked John Byrne on that?
John Beatty was inking some John Byrne Spider-Man stuff in the mid-90s, and he needed some help, and I'm pretty sure I got credit for it. And yeah, I inked some John Byrne stuff, yeah.
Well, I hate you now.
I actually do have another inking question for the two of you. If you're working with someone, therefore you're comfortable with a person's style, how much more productive can an inker be than a penciler?
Oh, well, it's like Art said. I'll answer this real quick because then I got to bounce. I just got the text for the link for the other thing I got to do. Well, Art kind of summed it up. I was taught in Hubert school, you should be able to pencil a page a day. And then from an inking standpoint, you should be able to ink a page and a half to 2 pages a day. And then from a coloring standpoint, you should be able to color. And coloring back then, this wasn't computer. This was doing color guides still. So from a coloring standpoint back then, you should be able to do like 10 pages a day. So basically a book in 2 days. And then from a lettering standpoint, you should be able to letter a book in a day, no problem. And that's hand lettering.
That was hand lettering. That's not digital.
Oh that to
me is amazing.
And a guy I went to the Hubert school with that graduated, with me and stuff. He's lettering first, man. He's a letterer. That's what he's done since he graduated. And he went from hand lettering to computer lettering with his own font. And he would letter a book in a day, hand letter.
Wow.
But he's a lot of work. And those guys weren't paid much. I still don't think they're paid much. But those guys were like, with ink rapidographs, they were every letter they were hand putting on the board. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Hey, man, I got to run. Anytime you want to have me back, I'd be glad to come back if I didn't have to run to this other thing at 8 o'clock.
Hey, no problem, man. I just threw this at you last minute, and Bob wanted to get you on as well. So I'm just glad we had this much time with you. So First Man is Andy's new book. He's coming out. He's CG, and the book looks great. Go back his book today. Give him some love. Give him some support. And continued success, Andy. I know you've tipped your toe quite a bit in the indie scene. So now you're Indiegogo. Now you're hanging out with us. So just glad to have you, man. I mean, welcome, dude. And anything we can do for you, just let us know, and we'll do it.
I will.
Nice
it's
to
a
meet
great
you, Andy.
Everybody's been super awesome. So I mean, just the fact I've never done this many live streams. I was on one last night. I was on Monday night. I mean, I've got more lined up. So I mean, this is just great. So I really appreciate it, guys.
Yeah. All right, man. I'm picking your brain, man.
Yeah. Hey,
good, brother.
I'll talk to you guys later.
Later, dude.
Yeah, dude, we had such a good time on Saturday, man. Just like I was just fanboying over him a lot because I've been following his career for quite a while, man. Like I said, I pulled out that drawing book. I was like, dude, I got this thing. Like I bought this thing years ago, and it's like, is this? I was asking, is this the first appearance of those characters? Because that's the first time I'd ever seen him was in that book.
Well, what people don't realize is Andy and Bart Sears. That was like the team supreme.
Yeah,
Those guys in the early mid '90s, they were unstoppable. I mean, Marvel Comics, and then Valiant. Was it Valiant?
it's Valiant with Exo-Man and War and Turok.
Yeah, I mean, just killing it.
Yeah, and he was talking about how like they met when Bart was doing Justice League Europe.
I was just gonna say, and then didn't they were following on some heavy footsteps of like Kevin Maguire on that Justice League stuff.
Did Andy do the English for the Eclipso miniseries? Remember
it looked like him. If he didn't, then it was definitely somebody that worked in the same style.
Yeah, because I remember that was like that big that was the big crossover for DC that year. Was the Eclipso invasion thing?
Yeah, I think I still have some X-Men pages that Andy and I did together. So go to my website, art at yeah. Oh no, it's oh my gosh, what is it? Art by T-Bear. I almost forgot. Yeah, go there, pick up a page.
It's interesting how people look at comics in different ways. I've been reading since I was a little kid, like many of people, and I never paid attention to anybody's name. I just read the comic book.
I never did either. Yeah.
And it isn't until recently.
Go ahead.
Well, no, I'm just saying it isn't until I've been doing this YouTube stuff that I started learning names. I mean, I knew some of the big ones like Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, of course, but yeah, it's been it's like almost like a new life of comic books for me since I've been doing this, because I've been learning about the people who do it, and that's kind of cool.
Yeah, there were three guys that when I was young, I bought all the stuff, like anything that Neil Adams did, anything George Perez did, and who's the other? I can't remember off the top of. Maybe it was Kevin Nolan, but there was a handful of guys like when I was younger that I bought, and like you, Chester, I never paid attention to, but I must have just bought those because I liked them. And then when I went back in my collection, I realized I had a ton of those books by those guys. John Buscema, that was the other one. John Buscema and Jack Kirby, like just ton of those books. And it must have just been, I didn't know who they were. I just liked the way they looked. Yeah. So most of my early collection is all those guys.
Yeah, for me it was John Byrne, Arthur Adams, and Mark Silvestri. Like
John Byrne, he a little bit predates me breaking into the industry, but I think I was aware of talent by that time.
I was just buying like his run on Superman and X-Men. Like that's when I got into those books. So and again, like you, I wasn't really looking at the name of the artist. I could just recognize that's the book I like.
The first artist whose name I knew that I caught my attention was Billy Tucci.
Oh, Billy Tucci.
That's cool.
Yeah, for me it was Jim Lee. I was like, because I kind of fell out of comics for a couple of years, and then I walked, and then I was in a grocery store running an errand for my mother or my dad, I can't remember, and I walked past the comic book spinner that was next to the pharmacist. The pharmacy, they always had a comic book spinner sitting there. I don't know why they always put it there, but it was that X-Men 275 cover.
Wow.
And I'm like, I was like, wait, whoa, what the hell is that? So I'm like, what is this? Is like that friggin' iconic cover, man.
I do remember that guy Rob Liefeld. Remember that guy?
The brilliant Rob Liefeld. I know how you feel about Rob, Chester.
You see, Art. I want to bring your attention down to the lower left-hand corner. Now that's a Texan, man.
That's Texas. They're there.
Well, I do have my Texas beer sampler here.
Nice.
Welcome to Texas. Nice.
Yeah. Do you get that when you cross the border? They just hand you one.
It was a housewarming gift, and then I have pecan pie.
Oh yeah.
Yeehaw. All you need some sweet tea and you're all set.
Yeah, so pecans are big here in Texas. They have all kinds of trees, everything, and so I'm gonna dig into that thing later. Yeah.
Man, you gotta get that 10-gallon hat, son.
Well, soon I have it written down. There's a store that has all the Texas paraphernalia you could ever want. So I'm probably gonna get some flashy snake boots.
Mhm.
Oh, when you get your cowboy hat, you got to get like the rattlesnake skin band around it with the head sticking out.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Can't get more Texas than that.
You can't get more Texas than that. Yeah.
I actually had a pair of cobra skin boots way back when I bought it in Thailand.
Well, the thing is, back in our day, Chester, like in the metal days of music, you could get away with stuff like that, man.
Oh hell yeah. Leather pants existed, baby.
Yeah. So how you doing, Joe? I like the hat, man, and the glasses.
Thanks, partner.
Howdy.
I'm doing okay. I had no clue. I didn't even think about the time change with you being on Central Time now. So I didn't realize that'd be 4 p.m. my time that you would want to start the show. So I was out running around with the kids and whatnot, and all of a sudden I get this alert about 20 minutes after the show went live. Like,
that was me.
Like, oh, they're on the air.
Yeah, I screwed up too, but I was gonna give you the heads up. Like, it's gonna be 6 o'clock my time.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Which I probably should have clarified. Yeah.
Centralizer is saying, don't listen to these men. Don't do the urban cowboy thing. He's like, you shut the hell up, Central.
Yeah. Although Joe is the scariest damn cowboy I've ever seen in my life. I mean, Jesus.
He's an urban cowboy.
Urban cowboy. I love it though. Yeah. Cool. I'm going to grab some coffee. We'll be back because, we've been live for 32 minutes and I'm not even awake. Text tip air.
What the hell's wrong with you, man?
Jeez.
Well, you could hang out. So go get your coffee, come back, and pontificate with the rest of us like a real man. So Joe, fill us in, man. It's been a month since we've done one of these shows.
Yeah. I've just been slammed with comics work. I've been doing my own thing. I see D Geek art in the chat. Yeah, so I put together a creative team for my new publishing company that I'm going to be launching here real soon. And D Geek Art in the chat, aka Elizabeth, is the graphic designer that I brought on board. And so we've been working on logos, and we're real close to finalizing logos for the company, and then we're going to get started on logos for my internet marketing stuff on YouTube and other video hosting platforms and various social media outlets and all of that. So I'm hoping to make all the public announcements in a few weeks, maybe.
Ooh.
Start showing some promotional art.
Yeah.
And then, start the old roller coaster ride, do kind of like pre-campaign promotional stuff all year. And then if I can get up to the point where I think I can maybe get 500 backers or so, then I'll be ready to launch. So I may have the book completely done before I actually launch the campaign.
What do you mean by 500 backers before you launch the campaign? What do you mean?
Well, I want to build up. I've spent the last 3 years networking with people and trying to establish, some kind of rapport with creators and with other customers like myself. And so I wanted to know a number of people before trying to launch a company. And
so you're talking more of a mailing list? Is that like mailing list?
Yeah. So if I can, so once I go public with the company, then I am going to start kind of gauging what sort of audience there is after that. And then when I think I'm within maybe 6 months or less of being able to build 500 names up on a mailing list, then that would give me an idea of when I would want to launch the campaign for the first book. So
Yeah.
2021 is going to be all about trying to build up excitement and interest, and then try to gauge, realistically what sort of audience is out there, how much longer, how much more work I have to do to build it up to the point where I could launch it and do well enough on a campaign I could recover all my production costs.
Okay. Yeah,
So-
it sounds like a plan. I've seen some of the artwork, you guys. It looks great. Joe has let us see some of the behind the scenes, and I must say they look very, very nice. So you're you're moving in the right direction, my friend, and you're working with all the right people. And Elizabeth D Geek Art is one of the good guys, good gals.
Yep.
I've worked with her in the past, and if you guys have seen Inko, he's the Hack Shack mascot. He's the ink bottle that's pulling his cap off, and I think he's saying something like, we're gonna come up with some kind of slogan like "Ink it up" or something like, or everything's better with ink or something, like something like silly. Kind of thing. All I could think about is I know Bob's a little older, but he's not as old as maybe Joe and I are. But do you remember Cream magazine? It was a rock magazine. I know Chester does. And then there was the bottle of beer, remember? And he'd go, "Boy, howdy!" Like that was his thing. So I'm kind of channeling that beer bottle with the mascot Inko. So she came up with those designs. They're very, very cool. So we're making T-shirts, and then we're going to branch out in some other things as well. So you're working with good people, Joe. She's really talented.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Things have been going really well, and we got into, I think, a good working rhythm. And I've told her some of my plans for early 2021 and what kind of graphic art assets that the company's going to need. And she's interested. So we're just going to keep rolling along. And like I say, I'm hoping that within a few weeks, I'll be able to go public, because once I've got finalized logos for both the company and then the YouTube channel and all the other associated social media stuff, I'm going to file trademark registration. And once that's underway, then I'm going to go public with everything.
Very cool. Very cool. So let us know. Keep us updated on
Joe's
stuff.
coming out of the
Do you have
closet.
your YouTube channel started yet?
No, I'm going to do that when I've got a couple of logos ready to go, because it's not going to be just YouTube. It's going to be across a lot of different channels all at the same time. And so I want there to be consistent branding, since I'm going to be in so many different corners of the internet simultaneously. So yeah, I'm thinking that maybe within a few weeks, I'll have the last couple logos that I need, and then I can file the trademark application stuff, and then I'll go live with everything.
So you guys, you know how Joe keeps saying logo designs? He's launching a universe. He's not just launching a book.
It's true.
Joe is one ambitious mofo, so he's going to launch an entire universe. But before we go any further, I need to ask you guys. Okay, so I got my HEB sampler. So you guys have to pick the next brewski I drink. So this is, wait, I can do it this way. Let's do it this way. Boom. Okay, so we have
Ridiculous AF.
There you go.
I think Bob already gave me a thumbs up on that one. Okay, then we have the Urban South.
Nah. It's too California.
Yeah.
Boring, right?
Yeah.
And then there's wait a minute. There's another Urban South. That's not fair. That's not variety. All right. And so then we have the bottles. I'm always a fan of bottles. And to be honest, how could you go wrong with, let me make sure it's
Good
not
cap.
Yeah, the cap. All right.
Round bottle, that's another plus.
Lawnmower.
There you go.
Lawnmower. Jesus.
Lawnmower man.
Makes me think of Todd.
Which style of beer is that?
The St. Arnold.
The lawnmower.
Yeah, that's refreshing. It just says refreshing outdoor beer.
Oh, okay.
It's an outdoor beer variety.
Outdoor beer, man.
So while you're mowing the lawn, you got to drink this stuff. And then we have Peace, Love, and Brewski.
Oh God, throw that out the window.
Yeah, that one's not. I'm not a big fan of that one. That's like some SoCal. That's like some SoCal beer.
I think it's coming down to these two, right?
There you go, dude. That can there that's the winner to me.
Yeah, that's the one. I vote for that too.
Yeah, ridiculous AF.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, here we go.
Oh,
either pop's good, man.
Is this the first? It does. Is this the first beer in Texas?
Hell no.
Hell no, man.
Oh my gosh!
That's my man. That's how you answer that shit. Yeah.
Oh shit! You gotta read this. This is boggling my mind. You guys didn't see the fine print. Do you see that?
Oh, peanut butter and chocolate.
Where's the peanut pork crackling?
It lives up to the label.
It is ridiculous.
Tastes like nuts.
Yeah, that was horrendous, man. Russian Imperial Stout, PB and chocolate. All right.
Russian
peanut butter and chocolate. I don't know. You might be able to get behind that.
You put hair on bulls.
All right, I'm gonna try one more, and then I'm gonna go with St. Arnold. Okay, let's try this once more.
St. Arnold tastes like ass clippings. Come on, Art. Put your more face on and suck it down.
See what he does for you people. This is for you people.
Got it.
Well, I just realized it's after 5 p.m. here, so I'm gonna go get a bourbon. I'll be back in a minute.
Yeah,
dude, I'm 2 in, man. Where you been?
Yeah, Bob started, I think, before the show. What was it? Bullet you're drinking?
Yep.
Is it too early for you, Chester?
I got a really heavy day today. I can't be drinking anything, dude.
Wuss.
Okay, yeah, you go deal with Japanese officials. Yeah, have at it.
Dude, that's when you need a few drinks.
That's true. Fair enough.
All right, I have to say that lawnmower, fancy lawnmower, this delivers. Yeah.
It's better. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it's a lot better.
Awesome.
And I'm not drinking it outdoors, so I'm a rebel.
You are. So how's Casa de Tex?
It's amazing. Yeah, I absolutely love it. I thought I would miss California a little bit. I don't miss it at all. I've lived there all my life. I don't miss it. I'm going to reserve for the summer. So ask me again this summer and see if I still go. Yeah, I love it here because I heard
when it feels like you're walking on the surface of the sun.
Yeah, the humidity and stuff.
Right.
It doesn't get as hot here, as it does in California, but the humidity will make you think it is. Yeah.
No, sure. Yeah. Well, after living outside of my home for decades, the one thing that always comes back to me, it's food.
Yep.
It's not the people, it's not the places, it's the food. And there's a few things that I've been jonesing for literally 2 decades.
Like what? Don't they pretty much have everything over there?
Proper clam chowder, for one.
Well, yeah, man, with all the seafood they have out there.
Nah, dude. Rhode Island is where Narragansett, where I come from, is actually where chowder was created. They own that shit. So no, I've never been able to recreate it. I don't have the skill or recipe, I guess. But that and a Chinese restaurant.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
A good Chinese restaurant? I thought you were going to go like something like Italian or like Mexican or something like that.
I can make that. I have that level of skill. I just don't have this level of skill, right?
Yeah. Chinese food is beyond you. Living in where? Japan.
Japan. Yeah. although my chahan is very good. My fried rice is really good. I do make good fried rice.
I will say one thing. Japanese food is one of my least favorite of the Asian.
Oh, it's horrible. Yeah.
Horrible. Yeah. I mean, Thai food, a Korean barbecue, even Chinese food, I find it superior.
Oh man, freaking lo mein. I mean, not lo mein, but what is it? Ramen is pretty awesome.
That's Chinese.
Is ramen really Chinese?
Yeah.
And all it is, like
udon. Udon is Japanese, right?
Well, udon is an adaptation, I guess. But men means noodle. Ra means of China.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
all it is
Chinese
salty,
noodle is what I'm
salty
translating.
pasta, Bob. Like,
What'd you say?
it's just salty pasta. It's
Nah, dude, man, real good udon is like special, dude.
Yeah. I don't really care for it, but my family likes it. I like ramen a lot, and there's some I think the Japanese do ramen better than Chinese do. I prefer Japanese version of it, yeah. So.
yeah.
Hey, Art, that comic, that box behind you is about ready to fall, dude.
The what?
That long box behind you.
Your
man.
long box, yeah.
That thing is balanced precariously.
Yeah. The thing is, like, I have an attic space right over here. I've never had attic space before in any place I've ever lived. And so I want to bring the long boxes up, but that's a lot of work. Those things are heavy. So I'm taking everything out of the long boxes. I'm putting in new plastic, new backing board, and put it in smaller boxes so I can get them up the stairs. It's really weird. I don't know if you've had this revelation yet, Chester, but I'm kind of thinking this might be the last time I look through all these comic books, because once they go up in the attic, I'll probably never see them again.
You gotta do what I do, man. You gotta build a shelf thing back here and just stack them all up there, so you can like hobble over there in your old age. Like, man, let me go and relive the days.
I got thousands of books, though, man.
Yeah, the majority of my books aren't even with me, Art. They're in the States. My brother has them.
What the hell's wrong with you?
Are you serious?
I just, I have some here, of course, but my youth when I collected, and I got I don't know, 15 long boxes or something. I just don't. My brother has them because I never. I was thinking about bringing them over a couple times, and then I checked the price in doing so.
Shipping, yeah.
They're heavy. Yeah, I'll tell you. Just my wife is a book person. I'm a book person. I'd say half the weight of the travel was all in just books. Jeez. And actually, Hammer of Doom says get some pulleys and some rope. I thought about that. I seriously have, because that is, it's got one of those fold down, staircase things, and still fairly steep. And my wife is not going to be an ally in this. She's not going to help me.
Probably not.
I'm on my own. So I did think about, like barns, how they have the hay and they bring it up, with the thing with the pulleys.
Sure. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking of doing. Yeah, finding a beam and bring up my comic.
I've kind of replaced a bunch of them in a way with the graphic. Well, it's not a graphic novel. With the I don't know what they call them, trades.
Trade paperbacks, yeah.
Yeah. They got 5, 10 comics in one big book. I got a bunch of those here, so I've been able to buy them in Japan. So,
well, the thing is, I have my personal comic book collection, which is immense. Like I said, like 1,000 books at least, and then I have the 35 years of my comps that I have as well. So the room over here is just filled with books, just comic books. It's crazy. And until you move and you start going through, because I don't know if you guys are like me, like I have stuff here, I have stuff over here, like in different rooms. And so you never realize how much like book or reading material you have until you compile it all in like a truck and have to ship it, through a couple states. And it's, my God, I have so many books.
I have a room, no girls allowed.
Yeah, I have that now. I have a room just for the books. Yep. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. How about you, Joe? What's your immense comic collection, and where is it?
Oh, I had to sell off my comics and action figures shortly after my wife and I got married, because I had that whole collection stored at my parents' house when I went off to go to trade school after high school. And I get back into San Diego, and my wife and I are in this little one-room apartment. And I figured, we'll save up, we'll buy a house, and then I'll move my entire collection over to the new house. And unfortunately, my parents moved, and
Oh my God.
they said, "You got to get this stuff out of here because we're leaving in a month." So unfortunately, I had to just sell it. I had a buddy of mine go down to San Diego Comic-Con. I couldn't even go do it because I couldn't get out of work. So I paid a buddy to go to the con and sell everything.
Wow.
And
you never sell your collection when you're desperate like that and you're out of time, because you're never going to get the worth of them.
Oh, I got ripped off big time. So, ever since then, I slowly started, I never really got back into the hardcore collecting mindset. Probably around 05 or so, I just started picking up a trade paperback here and there. I went to San Diego Comic-Con in 08, and I picked up an Absolute Dark Knight that I got down there on my shelf. I bought it from a guy who was desperate. It was the last day of the con. He was about to close up his booth, and he had a pile of them. And so I got that thing for a good deal.
Yeah.
There's nothing like raking someone over the coals when they're desperate.
No, that's what I mean.
I figured it happened to me. I might as well, pay it forward.
Fine,
and like Chester, I really didn't get back into single issues until recently. In 2018, I started buying singles again because I got into the indie scene, and it's still the only singles I'll buy from corporate comic publishers is classic stuff. I'll pick up. I got a really nice, it's a near mint copy of like the Uncanny X-Men and New Teen Titans from 1982.
Nice.
I like to pick up stuff like that, but as far as runs, I just do trades and hardcover omnibuses and stuff like that. The only new single issues I pick up today, it's all indie.
I was that same way for a while until about 2 years ago, and I actually started picking up a couple of monthly runs from certain books, like Chip Zdarsky's Daredevil. That's a great book, man.
Chip did better. He started rough, but he got better, man.
Oh yeah, dude. When he started getting into the Kingpin stuff and really delving into like the way. Okay, so one of the things I'm not a big fan of, I'm not a big fan of character deconstruction.
No, none of us are.
He actually managed to do it right because he brought him down, but he immediately brought him back up. You know what I mean? Like if you're going to break someone down and have them have a crisis of faith or something like that, you can't leave them broken.
Yeah.
That's one of the big problems when they do this stuff. That's what Tom King did with Batman. He broke him and he left him broken. But what he did is he brought him down. But even when he brought him down, he didn't stop being who he was. He was just like, I'm not going to be Daredevil anymore, but I'm still who I am. So I'm still going to do everything I can to help Hell's Kitchen.
So it sounds like from what you're saying that with Zdarsky, he brought Daredevil down as far as circumstances go, but he didn't bring his character all the way down, like Tom King did with Batman or Bendis has done with Superman.
Yeah, he did not.
Oh my God. Why'd you mention that
He
name?
did not reduce his core. Like he's still who he is and who he was, but he just had a crisis of whether or not this was the right path for him to go on. But then as soon as that happened, he brought him right back up and in fact elevated him. That's what you have to do a story like that. It's been a great run, man. It's the best book Marvel's putting out.
That speaking of Daredevil, and you guys were talking about some of the older creators when I joined the stream. What you were saying, Bob, that Zdarsky did, it reminds me of how when Frank Miller finished his run with Daredevil.
Yeah,
he had kind of gone from the penthouse to the outhouse as far as his circumstances were concerned, and then Ann Nesenti comes in, and Miller basically left Matt Murdock with nothing, no prospects, and then she built him back up again. And what a it was a great what an entrance, for a writer to come in and follow up Frank Miller. Not only that, but then to do such a great job building the character back up.
Yeah.
Well, the cool thing was is that even when Frank brought him down, though, at his core, he was still there. You know, he's like he's at the lowest of low, but it's that line at the very end of his run. It says, "What? Like, how dangerous is a man who truly is without fear?" Because when he got down that low, there's nowhere else to go but up.
Talking about the Born Again series,
Yeah,
with David Mazzucchelli.
Well,
yeah, but it ended on an up note. Like he basically did rebuild, himself and rediscover,
the thing with those guys like Miller or Morrison or that whole group of the British invasion and such, they're all very anti-superhero in their core, but they also are writers. So they wrote things in such a way that brought their sensibilities to the character, but they also know that they need to engage their audience. So in a way, they deconstructed in the correct way. The problem we have these days is
they tore him down, but then they built him stronger. I think Frank Miller in the day, he understood how to do that. I think later Frank just became a parody of himself and didn't quite understand
a long time
what it was. But when he was on that Born Again Daredevil series is one of my top comic book reads of all time.
Oh yeah.
That's also where I think his art was at its strongest.
That was David Mazzucchelli though that did the art.
Well, no, Frank did a lot of that art during his run, didn't he?
Not the Born Again series. Frank did all the ninja stuff. Was that before?
Okay, right. He did covers too for the Born Again series though. But like
I still remember the David Mazzucchelli stuff. But let me read this real quick. This is the Great D Geek art for $2. Mine fits in one long box under my art desk.
Educate yourself.
You're one of the lucky. You're the lucky few. Yeah. Like, I don't know if I could go back. Well, you know what? I was thinking if I could go back in time and say to the younger art, it's like, don't hang on to all these books. It's only going to bring you down. I think I'd still do the journey because, like right now, I'm enjoying going over all those books. You know what I mean? So you don't read them all the time. You don't go through all your whole collection every day. But it's probably been a decade or two since I've gone through mine, and I'm enjoying the hell out of it. I'm sadly not looking forward to some of the books I have from the '60s because a while back I did go through some of my older books before the move, and I can't remember which book this is. It's the Avengers, and it's when Captain America comes back from the Frost. I have that book, and I went in there specifically to look for the old books to put them in better packaging because I never had them in any kind of protective packaging. And as soon as I touched the cover, it just dissolved.
Oh my God.
And so I knew I still had to get it in a box if I was going to preserve it. But at the same time, I'm kind of destroying it, trying to get it into the bag. And so I'm looking forward to seeing those old books again. But I'm not looking forward to put them in a bag because it's going to break my heart. It's weird because the covers are the ones that turn to act. The interior, the newsprint stuff holds up better, but it's the cover paper that just kind of dissolves when you touch it. So that's going to be a little double-edged.
So you have a copy. Is it the one with like it says Captain America lives again on the cover?
Yeah, he's jumping, and then there's the panels on the side.
Okay, it's got like the Submariner panel on the side, and then the rest of the Avengers are behind him.
I believe so. Yeah.
It's Avengers #4, dude.
#4. Yeah. I have all. I think I have all the Avengers stuff from like 1 to like.
Oh, nice,
1.
dude.
But they're all in that shape.
I don't have many things from the '60s. Actually, I got the Spider-Mans. I got some Green Lanterns, but. I don't have many. How about you, Joe? You got 60 stuff?
No, I used to, but these days, what I have from that era is all reprint stuff.
Hire Lou Ferrigno to move your stuff.
Now Bob collects.
Might, yeah. He works cheap these days.
I do have some torn up Golden Age comics that I picked up not too long ago because I want to, for my channel, I'm planning some of the comic book centric stuff I'm planning is going to revolve around storytelling and how, how it's changed throughout the years and good storytelling, bad storytelling, etc. And so I picked up a few Golden Age comics, and I'm looking forward to showing those off.
Yeah, I'm gonna go into the TBR archive. I'm gonna bring out a book for you guys, but keep going.
Yeah, I've got a lot of that stuff. It's readable. It's in readable condition, but it's not in collectible condition.
No, that's what I picked up. Yeah,
most of the books that I bought, I didn't buy them to collect them. I bought them to read them. They're all very well read. So
yeah, I picked up a few issues of Batman, a few issues of Superman, and it's they're really just reader copies. And I made sure the interiors were clean enough that I could put them up to a camera and show people how they used to do it in the old days.
Right, but do you have this book?
No.
Inhumanoids. Yeah, there you go.
Unleashed.
This is my first comic book for Marvel right here.
Nice.
Oh, sweet,
is that the first book you worked on?
Yeah, I don't. It's weird because I just have a bunch of I have the book somewhere, but it's just a bunch of covers. Like they just sent me a bunch of covers. Yeah,
that's still cool though, dude.
Yeah, so I found this, and I do remember when I got back from New York, because I lived there for a while and worked to get my foot in the door, and so when I got back home, I had all the Inhumanoids toys shipped. They were shipped to my parents' house. And there was just a big care package from whatever toy company was manufacturing them, and even though I was in my 20s, I was still like, oh my gosh, I got all these toys. It was like Christmas time.
Yeah, it's cool, dude.
Yeah, so I pulled them all out and put them all together. And at this point, I had to move back in with my folks because I broke up with a girl that I was renting an apartment with, and I couldn't afford it on my own. So I'm living in my dad's garage, and he had like a rec room. So there's a pool table there. So I was sleeping on the pool table, and I have all these Inhumanoids toys around the pool table. It was so weird. It was so surrealistic. And my brother he's just a younger brother, and he turned that into like his party zone, right? So he would take his friends in there, they shoot pool, drink beer, and I had my drawing board in the corner. So I remember like trying to move out of the way for a pool cue to go past so they could make the shot. So bizarre. I
had a couple of those toys, man. I was the one with the undead one who had the chest that opened up.
Rib cage, yeah, and then you put the guys in it, yeah.
Did they do the comic before or after the cartoon?
I think it was all kind of that synergy idea where they all happen at the same time, pretty much. Yeah, and it was Marvel's Star line, so it was like the kiddie line of comics.
Okay,
I remember that.
Heathcliff, they had a lot of like the cartoon show books, stuff like that. Yeah.
Didn't Marvel had a deal with Hanna-Barbera for a while, didn't they? Or was that DC?
I know DC started putting out some of the Hanna-Barbera books.
Yeah, that was DC.
History, yeah.
That was DC.
Yeah, I think Hanna-Barbera, but there was a line of Hanna-Barbera books way back when, but I don't remember who published them.
But speaking of
the new ones were pretty good though. If you saw the what DC was doing with the Hanna-Barbera stuff, that was kind of fun. I liked it.
I really liked the Elmer Fudd one, the Batman.
Oh, that was awesome, dude.
I was shocked at how well written that was.
Yeah, it was so good. Snagglepuss was good too. But before we get off the subject, though, I do have a very weird story about an old comic. I don't own it; it's not mine. It's not even a comic, really. But I was helping moving some stuff here in Japan. I was an old lady. And we were just moving her furniture because they were moving her out to like a nursing home type of thing. And in the drawer of her, we were taking the drawers out. They had lined it with paper. And in there, one of the papers they had used was the cover of a pre-war Superman comic book.
Whoa.
Wow, that's some buck.
Well, it pissed me off and amazed me at the same time. But because there was nothing else, there were no other pages. It was just the cover, you know, the old one where they had him standing on the cover and doing his thing. But and it just shows you how connected we were before all that shit went down, right? But they just had it lying around somewhere and just used it to paper, and it had been sitting there for decades and decades and decades.
Well, Chester, you and I know, because we're history nerds, that Japan and the U.S. were allies prior to World War II.
Of course.
So there was a lot of trading going back and forth between the two nations.
Yeah. It's just the weirdest thing. You don't expect to see that in some old Japanese lady's house, dude.
No.
Yeah, especially with the context of what a lot of those old World War II.
This is before the war. This is before the war.
Yeah. Now, was it printed? Was it printed in English or in Japanese?
Oh no, it was in English.
Okay.
Yeah, like it was just the cover.
Yeah.
So I don't know where the rest of the comic went. I wish that it would have been cool if I could have found the whole comic in the drawers. Right, that would have been neat.
You know what?
But of course, it's not mine.
I have to ask this question though: why hasn't Marvel and DC had more success over the decades with translating comics and bringing them to the Asian markets? Like,
I know.
Oh, you know. Oh, go ahead.
I do. Yeah. They sent CB Sobalski to do it. No.
Do you mean Akira Yoshida?
Yeah. No, actually, it is an easy answer to it. Here with you got to keep in mind, we talked about this before. Manga in Asia is gigantic. Comic books in Europe is gigantic. America's the only place that's having trouble, right? But the sensibilities are quite different between those two places and America, of course. Here in Japan, they have this concept where, and it's an old concept, where the child saves the day, right? Because these stories are for kids; they're not for adults, right? Traditionally, now culture has changed, of course, but they still have the tradition of that. So over here, the kind of character that might be popular is someone like Spider-Man, and he is quite popular. But the problem is they don't understand the concept, and my kids are American, right? They don't get it. They don't understand the idea of you have a character that gets written by a different person. They don't understand that. You have one creator writes the story beginning, middle, end, and it's done, and then you move on to the next thing. So for us, having these characters have been around so long and they keep getting written by different people, that it's weird and alien to them, and it's almost like a shame for someone to pick it up and start penning it. It's not culturally acceptable, and I think that's an issue.
Yeah, that's interesting, Chester, because I've got if my publishing company is successful enough, I've got some long-term plans where I'd like to do translations and localizations in other countries, and Japan is one of them. And I have a contact. I have somebody who could do it. Okay, I have two contacts. I tell you what, I'll have you proofread what the other guy does, because I know you're really busy.
No, I am too busy. I'd be writing myself if I wasn't so busy.
That's what I figured. So that's one of the things, is that because it's not just translating, it's not just a direct translation to go back to the original question, but there's also what they call localization, which is you have to have somebody who is living in the culture that you want to have the work presented to, so that if there's something depicted in the art that the Japanese audience wouldn't necessarily pick up on, or let's say there's a joke that's made that uses very American metaphors, you have to have somebody who knows how to interpret that into some phraseology that would make sense to the Japanese in this case.
It's deeper than that, actually. I actually work with one of my students, and well, he is a student. I mean, he pays me for my time, but it's a different than what I normally do. But what he does is he takes Hollywood movies and he creates the subtitles for the Japanese, right? He does. They have, of course, more than one, but he does. He's quite busy and he does a lot. And what I do when I work with him, and doing scripts, which is kind of cool because I get to see scripts before the movies come out. It's neat. But when I work with him, the questions he has for me have nothing to do with what does this line say. It's what does it mean and what's
Yeah.
the cultural implication. So they're not translating the words at all.
Yep.
They're translating the concept and then they're taking it and putting it into a Japanese mindset. So
Yep.
I don't have a comic book experience with this, but I have movie experience with this, and very, very much they do that. And I think that's another problem because if we haven't noticed by now, Marvel and DC, these big companies, they have a hard time getting out of their own way,
Yep.
right? And it's hard for them to, with the trickle down management and stuff like that, for them to really allow something to be done, freely that as it needs to be done. Because if you want to bring Spider-Man here, for instance, and do it successfully, it would be unrecognizable to us, right? So
There's a cultural difference, but the
Yeah.
thing is that I never quite understood is, Marvel DC books, even early Image, because I remember talking when they were creating a division to start trying to market Image books in the mid '90s, to European, to Asian markets and different markets like that. And so the thing is, the Philippines, Brazil, Spain, Mexico, Germany, France, like almost every country had comic books, in their language. But one thing, I don't even own any comics because I have some that are in different languages that I've worked on, but I don't have one that's in any Asian language at all. So I don't think it's ever even really happened before that they've adapted any of these comic books into Chinese or into Japanese or Korean or any of these languages. So I was just wondering, like, I mean, obviously these are different cultures too, but they're adapted, but just not in the Asian markets. And let me read D Geek Art before we go forward. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. I appreciate the $5. My husband still has some Scrooge McDuck comics from '69 and '70s. Wow. My collection is small because I have no space, and my kids would ruin them. Yep, kids ruin everything.
Same here.
Yeah, of course they do. But I do have an answer to that. You might not like it though. There's another thing that goes on here in Asia. This isn't a comic thing. It's just kind of in general. They love the imagery of Western things. The concept of it doesn't really matter. For instance, you'll see a lot of kids with like a Powerpuff Girl shirt or something like this, but they've never seen Powerpuff Girls or a Disney shirt. They've never seen a Mickey Mouse cartoon ever, right?
Okay.
So the imagery is cool, but and you ask, well, why is that? It's not hard for them to get a hold of that stuff. There is Disney Japan, right? They do have a Disney TV here, but it comes down to, I don't know how to put it lightly, so I guess I won't. Arrogance. The Asians do see themselves as superior to other humans. They just do. Now the Chinese are loud and obnoxious about it, and the Japanese are not. But the attitude is the same. So they don't really want your stuff in their home. Now they might not, like I said, the Japanese might not say it outright, where the Chinese would just say, "Get the fuck out." I mean, that the Chinese are like that. But it's going on. I run into this problem all the time as a teacher. I work with the government here, and I deal with the education with the syllabus for the year. I do all kind of stuff, and I run into teachers all the time, and they really don't understand why they're wasting time teaching English in their school classes. They don't get it, right? And they're almost offended by it as much as the Japanese can be offended. So I have to deal with this type of cultural arrogance all the time. Now, I'm not saying Americans can't be arrogant, but I'm just saying this is another issue, and I don't know how deep that goes as far as our conversation about comic books, but I bet you it has part of it.
I can see that because I think Antonio or Dennison says, I think that there has been, like Marvel IPs or DC IPs that have been translated, like done by Japanese creators, and then marketed to them, but not like a straight up, American.
Like take the stuff that's come before and send
right. Right.
Oh,
so
you can find them, guys. You can go find a Spider-Man from a few months ago right now. You can find it, but it's very specialized and it's not widespread at all.
But I'll tell you right now, that money isn't coming back to Marvel or isn't coming back to DC because I've never received a royalty from any of those areas ever.
That's interesting.
Yeah. It just is. So I always wondered that because especially Japan, you hear it's got such a big comic book market. Yeah. I always wondered, like, well, if Marvel and DC could break into that market, holy shit, they do it with their films, like their movies, they're able to break down these cultural barriers, but it doesn't seem like they're able to do it with the comic books, which has always boggled my mind.
To do it, you'd have to do what Chester said. You wouldn't be able to take what's come before.
No,
you would have to pick a single artist, a single writer, a single creative team, and do a story with a beginning and a middle and an end. And you'd have to do it the way they do manga.
That's where I'm hoping. Like I said, this all depends on if my company is successful enough. But I'm hoping long term that I'll be able to get into the Japanese market, the Brazilian market, and the Spanish-speaking market, starting in Mexico and then branching out from there.
That involves waxing, Joe.
Because I'm just going to pretend I didn't hear that. The reason why is because I've got long-term plans to be, writing certain titles, for as long as people are willing to buy them. So there would be consistent writing there. And then if the company gets big enough that I'm able to bring in other creators, the idea would be to have them working for at minimum, a certain run, let's say, on a particular title. So what I'm hoping to do is bring back some of those old days where you could expect to have like a John Byrne and a Terry Austin, for example, that kind of a run on Uncanny X-Men, or you could have, George Perez and Len Wein on a title, and it would go for a few years at a time. So, I mean, only time will tell if I'm able to do any of it or not, but that's the hope at any rate.
I don't think the European and the Brazilian and like those markets, I don't think it'll matter. I think it's always good to have the consistency, because I used to always say like on the X-Men books and like there would always be like, we can only do 2 in a row or 3 in a row because of the amount of work, that labor that was going into the books, but also just that, like Will's Portacio used to say, we're always inheriting bad schedules. So there's even if you're as fast as you can get, if you inherit a bad schedule from the previous creators, you're screwed. You're not going to get around it.
Someone whose art was as intensely detailed as his, man. If you're on a bad schedule already, you're boned.
Oh, we were boned, man. I mean, those books were coming out like within days after we finished it. Like, wow. We were not months in advance. We were like days in advance on those X.
Wow, that's
you want to talk about some crazy level detail, man. That dude was like on another level back in that day.
Yeah, I forgot even what I was saying now.
Well,
about Will Portacio and all the work and all the crazy shit that we used to do. to get those books out. But I just think that to Joe's point, I think that long runs on books is good. And that's what I was going to say. Excuse me. I used to think, like, if you watched a serialized TV show, like your favorite show in the day, like you're watching Magnum PI, right? And so it's Tom Selleck. He's the guy. Every week you see him. And then one week it's somebody else playing the character, right? That's off-putting.
Right.
So when you have a different creative team on a book, it becomes off-putting. So because they draw in a completely different style. So you might be drawing and making the characters look like Tom Selleck, 1 month, and then you have another guy, he doesn't even come close to the style guide. You know what I mean? It doesn't look
like Danny DeVito.
Yeah, it looks like
Oh my God.
It's like day and night. But yeah, so I think consistency is really, really important, Joe, like you're saying, if you're going to do serialized comics, if you're going to do some kind of monthly installments. Because
speaking of consistency, Art, you want to share that picture I'm showing there?
Oh God.
Uh-oh.
Is this what you're talking about?
This is what I was talking about, man.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Holy shit, dude.
This is the future of Spider-Man, man.
One last comment before we get into this stuff, please. Just one last comment. Joe, if you really want to break into the Asian market, what you need to do is take your cosmology, find an artist, and let them do what they want to do with it. That's how the only way to do it. Give them a cosmology, a framework, and then they will create inside of it. That's how you would do it, and then just put your
Are you talking about
on
a Japanese creator or an American?
Yes, no, absolutely not an American. The mindset it's alien. You have to go to the Japanese. Yeah,
it's a good point, and I was just replying to Antoine Dennison, who made a similar point. He said, if you want to succeed in foreign markets, look at what's successful in those markets. Exporting what's being done here, in my view, will be difficult to establish elsewhere. And I was just going to say to Antoine, it's a great point and something that I have had in mind. And I've kind of had this internal debate about whether it would be better to try to, do like take a book, like we're producing a book in 2021. It's happening. Okay. So the debate for me internally is, do I take that book and do a, go through translation and localization in a foreign language, or I'm really glad we're talking about this tonight, because for me, what I need to do is talk to different people in the countries where I'd like to be, or at least the languages I'd like to be publishing in, because what's true for Japan, and like what you're saying, Chester, I certainly trust your judgment in that. Yeah. So I think what I need to do now is talk to the guy in Mexico and basically say, hey, do you think it'll work to do a typical translation localization, adapt this into Mexican Spanish, or do you think it would be better to just hire somebody in Mexico, give them the story Bible, and then have them do that? What's that, Art?
I can completely answer that. Like I said, all those markets, it isn't going to matter. Marvel and DC, they already sell in those markets. Brazil's a big one. But the Asian markets are going to have to be handled the way that Chester is talking about. Because even if you think about like the way Warner Brothers sells their cartoons and stuff like that, they get Japanese creators to do Batman, their take on Batman, whatever it is. And I think there's been a slew of Spider-Man, animated the same way. So I didn't know. I knew that they were pretty centric, but when Chester said it, like everything just lined up, that if you're going to do it, I think you would be best to just start from scratch and get Japanese people to do it for you. And also that way, I guess you could give the writer an overview and then just let them go, from there. And then,
that's what I meant by cosmology.
Yeah. And then market it and stuff like that within that country. Because I mean, there's got to be truth to it, because Marvel and DC still haven't really broke down those doors. and there's got to be a catch to it. Otherwise, they would be completely tapping into that market because it's a big market, and they haven't even scratched it.
No, because they don't understand it, and they haven't bothered to try to understand it. They just keep banging their heads against it and get someone to translate for them. But Joe, if you do want to try that and try to get in context, I can try to help you. One of the things you need to do is put together an overview or cosmology, and let me take a look at it, and I'll make sure it has the proper avenues for a Japanese mind.
Oh, great. That'd be awesome.
The mind of Chester. Well, we got $5 here. U.S. Hero Comics have a what is that? How do you say that word?
Abrahamic version of Justice Counter.
Version of Justice Counter 2, Asian Value Beyond the Technical Issues. U.S. movies market on beauty and production values. That sounds about right. There's a lot of visual wow factor. I got to ask you, based on that, Chester, how does star power translate in Japan? So, like, you always hear like Tom Cruise is an international star and stuff like that, but a lot of these Marvel movies are popular in Japan, but they're not really based on too much star power.
No, I mean, it kind of comes down to Mickey on the T-shirt, right? They don't really care much about actors' names. Matter of fact, they probably can't even tell you who Robert Downey Jr. is. Of course, there's going to be a smattering of people, but in general, they can't. But it's shiny. It's Michael Bay-esque, and it's easy to just sit and understand. But one of the experiences my family has had many times is we'll go to the theater and watch an American movie, like a superhero movie, and there'll be a joke, because there's always some kind of joke. And my family is all laughing at the joke. The rest of the theater is dead silent. So they don't get a lot of it. For them, it's just the flashiness, the Americanness of it and stuff like that. And I have to say, I disagree with the Abrahamic comment a little bit. I understand what you're thinking, but you're thinking East versus West. And it doesn't get that deep. In truth, if you look at a lot of the most popular and successful Japanese manga, translating into the anime, which you probably have seen, those are all Western themed. Think of Miyazaki, right? Howl's Moving Castle, or think of Evangelion, which is a big popular thing. It's based on Western Christianity. Most of the Japanese stories are based upon Western concepts anyway. Now, they don't get it, but it's based upon that. So I don't agree with the Abrahamic thing not translating. It does actually, it might not translate literally, but it does translate into their interests. But they take it and they do it from their point of view. And manga stuff is always grandiose. It's over the top. It's always wordy.
Yeah.
And it's full of philosophical concepts that may be absurd, but they're philosophical nevertheless. So I don't know if that helps, but.
Well, one of the things I heard, like a big difference in U.S. concepts used to be a little bit more like this, but then they became very logic based and very like, if this happens, you ask this question, you answer this question. So everything becomes very like logical. There's less left to interpretation. And one of the things about Japanese, especially the animation stuff, is that it's not spoon-fed. Like, there's a lot of variables and there's a lot of things that are open to translation. And like, especially like the newer American stuff is very, very ask the question, answer the question. So it's less up in the air like that. Where like you have to suspend more disbelief, I think, in the Japanese animation stuff, because they don't like, they'll just bring up a concept and they won't explain it. It'll just exist. It's matter of fact. But then like in American stuff, especially the newer stuff, they feel the need to explain why and how. How did this come to be? Why? Things like that. And I just noticed that I can't remember, it was the Ghost in Shell director. It was one of those guys, and he was talking about it, and he was saying it's way more kind of esoteric or up in the air. And then they said when they market to the American public, it's the opposite of what you're saying. They try to tailor it to that, answer the questions. If we bring up this, like this is the way, this is the big machine. Well, what does it do? How does it work? Things like that. They start asking those questions and answering those questions to base it more on an American audience. So I think it goes both ways. I think a lot of to get the American audience, the Japanese are trying to tailor that stuff more towards that as well.
That's true. They're less literal, is what you're trying to say. And an interesting point on that is a lot of Western people will watch Japanese anime, and of course, it's become more popular, right? And they'll watch the anime, and they'll see some character glowing in the sky, or blood coming out of the nose, or some kind of effect happening, and they think that character is doing that they're actually displaying a power or doing something. They're not, and the Japanese instinctively understand this. This is emoting an idea, an expression, an emotion. It's not literally happening on screen, even though you see it happening on screen. And Western people don't even know that this exists, let alone understand the concept. And they do this all the time. You guys have seen a bunch of anime, and you've seen something happen on the screen you thought was happening. But from the Japanese point of view, it's just the expression of emotion. It is not actually happening. It's not happening in the situation.
It's more symbolic.
It is symbolic. Yeah.
Something. Yeah. Definitely. And like older like US, concepts and comics and movies didn't feel the need to be that literal with stuff. And it has gotten, I think it's taken Joe and I talk about this a lot about writing comics and stuff like that. I think a lot of those ideas have taken the fun out of these action adventure and these fantasy stories, because now they feel the need to answer the questions versus, just have them exist and be matter of fact, where a lot of the Japanese stuff is just that. It just happens. They don't feel the need to explain it. They just roll with it.
Yeah.
Blink, Joe.
It is a good conversation.
It was fantastic. Spider-Man.
We should go on to that. Yeah, we should. Because we'll be here all day if you don't.
Because I want to hear what you guys think about this.
Well, I do have to say this. My wife actually dropped a piece of glass in the downstairs kitchen because there's serious riots right now in D.C. There's one person shot. So
yeah, there is
crazy stuff going on in the States right now. So I do remember a mutual friend of Pamela's and I's, and he said maybe it was like 8 years ago, maybe longer, and he said there's going to be a civil war in this country, and that's when he moved his business from California to Texas. That was like 10 years ago. So I don't know.
In the guest rooms.
I do, yeah.
I have to find out how much it costs for a visa and a ticket.
Everybody moved to Texas.
Speaking of Texas, I brought some Tito's vodka. It's made in Austin. I don't know what the hype level is for it in Texas. In California, it's hyped quite a bit. I'd say it's overrated. If you decide to try it, I'd say it's a good mid-tier vodka, but not more than that.
Well, do we trust Texans with vodka? I mean, shouldn't that come down to the Russians?
I trust Texans with whiskey. That's about it.
Yeah, that's true. But let's see that picture again. Let me see that Spider-Man picture.
All right, Art.
All right, let's go.
Let's look at this vast improvement for Spider-Man here.
Oh. Well, there you go.
Can we all take a moment to look at this piss yellow background and reflect on the fact that it just makes it worse?
The worst thing too is I don't think that's a hand-drawn background. I think it's just like a scan of
That's right.
But it's just like who thought this was a good idea? This background on this.
The problem with it is, Bob, is that I don't think it's a bad looking costume, I guess, but you're leaving your branding behind. How are we going to know who that is?
It's a bad costume for Spider-Man. You know what this reminds me of? You guys remember when Tron, the Tron movie, the sequel Tron Legacy came out, and they did that series of book covers where it was all like Tronized.
Yeah.
That's what this reminds me of. And it's just this is like the eye spider.
Yeah, well, also there's certain, like we were talking about, like Japanese American language and symbolism and all those things. Well, in comic books, when you have a white and blue character, they're cold colors. So you should have a character that has freezing powers or some kind of like cold powers. You don't have a spider that is white and blue.
Yeah.
So the language is just wrong in the color scheme. And what the hell is orange?
Yeah,
that's bullshit.
Orange glowing piping.
Yeah.
And now if they had made that red, it would have helped a lot.
It would have helped. That's a good observation. I totally concur.
If they had made the white part red, and then the orange glowing piping, if they had made that white, that would have been much better, I think.
We already have that, though.
Yes, I understand. I understand that, and I think that's why they didn't go with that.
Well, obviously, these things are designed to piss people off. I mean, I'm pretty much sure of that now. They're going to get headlines. It's like the kid that just misbehaves because he gets attention. There's the kid that's getting straight A's and he knows he can't get the straight A's. But then there's the kid that keeps effing up, right? And he gets attention too. So it's like almost like Marvel's that kid that just keeps fucking up, right? Yeah. And he gets attention for it. Because also, editorially speaking, I don't know if this is the finished cover or if this was like wherever you got it from, Bob. But there's a tangent on that. It's our left, his right.
Yeah.
It's the whole spine of the comic book.
Yep.
Just absolutely. Yeah. That's amateur hour. That is the god. It should not have even been. It shouldn't have gone this far.
And I noticed that they've actually edited this because there was up here, this building back here, the original picture that they released for this, it said it had Stark Industries back here. So I'm wondering if they flashed that out because this is going to be some kind of a Tony Stark kind of thing.
That was the first thing besides that it looks awful, I thought, okay, so they're really going back to the whole Tony Stark, Spider-Man, Iron Spider gimmick again.
Yeah. And it's just the design of it is just strange, man. There's no webs in here. There's no webbing in it. So there's no designation for Spider-Man. The glowing eye thing and the ear muff thing is just weird to me.
The ear muff.
Yeah, and then these gloves on his hands. It's like this literally looks like an iPhone version of a spider suit.
It's bad.
No, and the point we were making earlier, Bob, is the fact that that you're not going to see a Japanese wearing this on a T-shirt. They have no idea who it is.
Yeah,
it's not recognizable. Right?
Mm-mm. Yeah, and like you said, there goes your branding. It's like they're going to be like, "Is this a completely new character?"
Yeah, it only exists to piss people off. I'm totally convinced. That's
probably true.
Well, that's all Marvel's doing right now.
One thing I will say about it, though,
acting out.
One thing I will say about though is if you think about it from that perspective, people are talking about it.
Yeah, but the thing is, people are talking about it, but they're not buying it. See that these idiots got to start understanding. It's like the kid that's fucking up, right? The kid that's getting straight A's is getting attention, but he's going to go on to rule the world. The kid that's fucking up is just fucking up. He's getting attention short term, but he's not making sales. He's not inspiring. He's not motivating. He's not changing anything. He's just tearing things down and getting attention. And that's the difference. I don't understand. Oh God, Bob's got another image here.
That's me. I found the Stark one. Yeah.
Oh, it's Chester actually. Yeah, Chester's got it. Hold on a minute. I want to get Gaming or What TM. Thank you so much, my friend. I do appreciate the $5 super chat. You're the best. Let's go. I thought this was Bob, but this is Chester. Oh,
yeah, there it is. That's the other one. Yeah, there's the Stark thing in the back.
Okay.
Yeah, looking at it from that angle, it's even worse because this is a different artist doing it. I think here. Yeah. It's even worse.
The composition.
Looks like a robot.
Yeah.
And
like the suit is bad. The composition is bad. The oversaturated background is bad.
Who's drawing this?
The same piss yellow background. I don't get it, man.
Anybody know the artist on this?
No, I didn't look into it. I just saw it and I was just like, yeah, I'm not buying this shit. This is awful. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
I'm almost 100%. He'll have this costume for like a few issues, and he'll go right back to the other one.
Probably. Yeah.
You know, like I don't know, man. I don't get it. I don't know how you turn this into an editor and be like, you stop drawing, you hit gold. You know, it's like,
well, you know, the thing is, they keep trying to reinvent everything, and then they're still doing it with Spider-Man. But yet, Spider-Man still sells. Spider-Man's still cool. I mean, we saw a perfect example of this with the video games, right? We had the Spider-Man video game come out a couple of years ago. It was really good. People enjoyed it. They were talking about it. It was all a buzz, right? Then they came out with the Miles Morales, which I thought was going to be DLC, but they decided to squish that into a DLC full pay price game is what they did for the PS5, and it didn't sell well, and people hated it. And it's like, you know, well, why is that? Because it's Peter Parker, right?
Yeah.
And Peter Parker is still relevant. You know, what is it? 60 years later, he's still relevant. You don't need to mess with Peter Parker. It's just like what they did, all that nonsense to Superman, especially after they killed him and brought him back. All those stupid costumes and stuff they did, or some of the crazy things they done with Batman. Although they didn't go as wild with Batman, interestingly.
Mhm.
But they've done this several times, and it's like it already works. You have a branded character. You don't need to be that radical. And like even in the Spider-Man game where they changed the emblem to white, I couldn't stand that. This is a freaking atrocity.
And and someone said that this is Gleason's design. If this is Gleason's design, he is seriously phoning this in because this is not his best work.
Well, that's the thing, is that when an artist gets an assignment to redesign a costume, especially an iconic one like Spidey, typically they're given directives from editorial.
Mhm.
And they're told, you know, we want you to do something like this, and we don't want it to look anything like the original. We want to change, blah, blah, blah. And they'll, you know, give their reasons for it. So my guess is that he got instructions from editorial, and he had to work with what he was told to do.
Yeah, I don't think it had a lot to do with Patrick Gleason just coming up with the stuff out of his head. I think you're right, Joe. It was probably a little bit of art direction on Marvel's part. You know, we want white and orange, you know, with blue or some such nonsense.
Well, he looks like Taskmaster. I mean, come on.
Exactly. That's exactly what I thought. I was like, these are Taskmaster's colors.
They are. Yeah. Now, Art, I actually, since we're on the subject, you're kind of the perfect person to ask, because during your time over at DC, they did some major comic book shifts with the costumes under Jim Lee. And what did you feel about because they changed everybody's costume, the Jim Lee stuff.
The
yeah,
new 52.
I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I didn't like, because the thing is, each character has to be individual. Like they created their character, they created their costume, they created their look. So when they all have some kind of uniformity to it, then it starts looking homogenized, and like story wise, you start thinking like, well, did one person create all these costumes for the entire Justice League?
Yeah.
So what's the deal? And so the thing is, yeah, it just doesn't work. And I'm not against changing a costume. You know, I'm not, but make it story, as long as the story warrants it. You know, we've had some great, you know, characters that have changed their costumes for a story arc, right? And it just seemed to fit. No one questioned it. You know, they might go, well, I didn't care for the suit compared to the original, but the story more than made up for it. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but when I was doing Spider-Man, I mean, not Spider-Man, but Superman, he had a black suit without the cape. And it made sense within the story. I mean, it was a shift to show a different personality he was changing. So it wasn't just like, well, we're going to change the costume and that's going to be it. They changed the costume to reflect a paradigm, a storytelling shift, you know?
Yeah. And I don't have a problem with that. Like I said, that X-Men 275 cover that Jim Lee did when all the X-Men were in the original yellow and blue costumes. Yeah. They had him for that particular story, but he immediately went back to their own colors before that, after that was done.
Well, the one thing that was really cool about the X-Men, and Joe, if you're listening and you want longevity with your line of comic books, take this under advisement. What the X-Men has done and why it is so it still resonates, it still connects, or it has up to a certain point. I haven't read these books in 10 years, so I can't speak on that. But every new team that comes in redesigns the entire look of the characters.
You're right.
Every time you come in, you reinvent for a new generation. So you get, young people or somebody that has a vision. It doesn't have to be young, but somebody has a unique vision, and then you bring them into the books. So if you think about every really successful X-Men run or aspect to the run has always been a different art direction, an art direction that completely worked. And so usually when you have X-Men runs that are kind of mediocre, they just go with the status quo. They're not artists that have a vision of how to make things new or more contemporary looking. So I do believe, like, I always used to think the Teen Titans and the X-Men were the natural competitors between the two companies.
I agree.
The biggest difference I always thought was that the Teen Titans never updated every so often. They never had that cool, flashy guy come in and reinvent. And there was a moment in time, and I think I mentioned it on a couple shows back, if you look at my history, my YouTube history, where I talk about this, where, like, when I came in, I redesigned that Nightwing character. So we took him from the George Perez, to that more, it's not the new one, but with the kind of eagle or
that yellow chevron.
Right. And then, that I kept the light blue because it was still part of the original look. So I didn't want to veer too much, but I knew that the disco Elvis look with the big, collar and all that stuff just wasn't fine anymore. But even before that, the reason the Titans worked is because George reinvented them. George and Mark reinvented them. They put that team back on the map, and then DC just didn't follow up. So they had kind of like a dead zone period. And then when Jonathan Peterson, as an editor, came in, good friend, he edited Black and White. When he came in, he was like, let's change everything. Let's bring new characters in. Let's redesign the costumes. Let's do all this stuff, because he understood what works.
Yep.
So as far as just changing costumes, it can work, but I think there's certain IPs it works better with. So like the X-Men, it's always been worked into the concept. They've always changed their costume. You know what I mean? They're not like Superman, where it's always been this one iconic costume through their entire career. It's already built into the concept that they're going to change their costumes. And so that's what I think, that if you want longevity, just take it for whatever it's worth, Joe. Possibly bring that into the idea where these characters do change their costumes periodically.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that is something that I've told my illustrator. I've said that we're going to start this introductory 12-chapter story. It's going to introduce the entire universe to the readers. And I said, we're going to do promo art with the costumes that certain characters are going to start out with, but that's not necessarily what they're going to be in after the 12-part story is over, because we're going to see these characters all go through a growth, some for better, some for worse, but none of them are going to end up at the end of the introductory story arc where they were in the beginning. And so, assuming that the company is successful and readers really respond to these characters and this universe, then the idea is, once that introductory story arc is done, then we'll see a lot of redesigns on costumes and stuff, because the characters will be in a new place after the conclusion of that arc.
Well, since you're talking about that, and that's a good idea, one of the things that comes to my mind as a reader, because I kind of transitioned from the 70s into the 80s into the 90s in my bulk of my reading time, and one thing that struck me with Claremont's run on the X-Men was of course they had their iconic look, but they were in street clothes a lot. They were normal people, and that's one of the things I think Claremont did subconsciously that worked really well for his story run. So I think that's a good idea to have that kind of thinking. They're normal people, whereas
You know what
Superman's
else
not.
works? The reason the X-Men work as well is they look unique in their street clothes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Wolverine still has the hair. Storm still has the
Yeah.
white with the really exotic eyes, and each one of those characters, they have a look. Like, you can't really do that with any of the core Justice League characters because they're all pretty much cookie cutters with the exception of different color hair. You know what I mean? Like, you can't really do too much of that. And so I think that the X-Men, there's a lot of things that they did right. And actually George Perez and Marv Wolfman's Teen Titans was the same, where they all can kind of work both ways. So that's brilliant that you brought that up, Chester, because I do think then that also humanizes the characters, but also makes them unique. And in the X-Men, when they go to a shopping mall, and they're in their street clothes, but they're still slightly off. You know what I mean? Like, there's still something weird about those guys. When they're in with a crowd of people, which always, as a kid, I never really thought about it until you brought it up. It was always interesting. They were always interesting characters, regardless if they had the super suits on or not.
Well, I'm gonna tell you right now, man. As far as fashion goes, this is what we're supposed to be wearing.
Oh, Jesus.
All right, if you want to share that.
I'm always worried when Bob has a picture to share.
Because
you got me skittish.
It's 2021, man. It's set in 2021. So who's going to be the first one to wear a leather spike codpiece out in public here?
I don't want that outfit, but I want that vehicle. I would love driving down a Texas highway in that car.
Well, what's her name? She goes to that thing every year, isn't it? Tyler
and Weekend.
Yeah, she goes to that.
There, yeah.
That thing, but hey, it's 2021, man.
Yeah, I may or may not have worn something like that at some point in my life. But
on stage.
For all you guys know, I could be wearing something like that under
right now. Yeah. Oh no. But it's interesting you mentioned that. And by the way, nerd alert. In the Marvel role-playing game back in the 80s, which was great fun.
Yeah.
I used to love playing that when I was a high school kid. But in the game itself, they actually had a mechanic with mutants that your popularity, meaning how you interact with the world, you have to roll dice, right? Was actually lowered no matter what you were wearing or doing. You were always off. And it's interesting that you mentioned that because it's an important factor of the mutants, right?
Right.
So they even understood
they're
that.
not humans, right? They're
you got a 6 foot tall African woman with blue eyes and white hair. You know?
But even the normal sized ones had that effect, and Art had pointed that out very clearly in the comic book. It worked really well, and those guys who were doing that art were spot on with it. It was one of the genius parts of the X-Men, I think. Let's see. Checkpoint had said something much earlier that I'm kind of think we should touch on a little bit with Spider-Man. We know for years now they have been seemingly desperate to remove Spider-Man as the face of the company and make Captain Marvel the face of the company. They've been desperate to do this. They have failed a lot, but they are desperate. Do you think? I don't think so. But he's asking, do you think this costume change is intended to just lower Spider-Man some more so they can build up Captain Marvel more, especially seeing it's coming up next year. We're supposedly getting another Captain Marvel movie.
No, I don't. I think this is just them doing what they always do. Every time they do one of these things like this, they know that the fans aren't going to like it.
Yeah.
It's meant to create buzz, and it's doing exactly that.
Yeah.
But in the long run, it's not going to help. I think what's happened with Spider-Man and the fact that they've removed him as the center of their universe, I think that was a like you said, it was a deliberate thing.
Yeah.
And and ever since then they've just downplayed the character. But that's intentional to create, because I think they think his popularity will sustain even if he's not the center of the universe like he's been for the last 30 years.
Yeah. It goes against most of our wisdom,
common sense.
Common sense. it's completely asinine. But I mean, once again, I mean, they never talk to us, the pontificators. We have all the answers.
We do.
The industry would be a much better place if Chester was at the board meetings.
It's really funny that you mentioned Captain Marvel because they have like gone out of their way to make her like so ridiculously overpowered. This current King in Black storyline with they've actually had to sideline the character. They had to come up with a BS reason for sidelining the character because they've made her so powerful she could just come in and kick the crap out of him. You know, so they had to come up with this BS of like, well, it was like, well, he's doing this thing where he takes over other, like the symbiotes that he has in control of. He takes over other characters and he's controlled. It's like, if I go in there, he takes over me. It's over. You know, so they kind of wrote themselves into a corner with like they've made this character so powerful that like, well, we got to come up with some MacGuffin to why she's not in this storyline, and she just takes him out with one punch.
No, it's true. And what they've done with Captain Marvel in their desperation, they've taken an interesting, CD lister that's a very good character to show up every now and they have turned her into a villain because she is now on power with Superman, or of course, according to them, probably greater, but she has no moral compass whatsoever.
Yeah,
she is vigilante in every way. She's mercurial.
Might makes right.
Might makes right, and that's now you've really screwed yourself because now you have your ultra powerful character that kick everybody's butt without a problem because Mary Sue and all, and she's not a good person.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what do you do with that? Now you've really screwed yourself.
Murdered Tony Stark.
Well, I mean, yeah,
they've been trying to write themselves out of that hole for like the last year.
Yeah,
you just brought up a great character arc, for the and a story for Marvel to do. Like turn her into a villain.
Yeah,
lead it up to that. Then have her pay the price. Have them bring her down a notch, and then
like they did with Hal Jordan.
Yeah, start all over again. Yeah. It's the only way you can do. I mean, where do you go from there? I mean, DC has been fighting the Superman thing for decades. Like he's so overpowered. They
had to reduce him.
Right, that they feel like they have to keep reducing his powers or his abilities to humanize the character. I think it's a mistake.
Yeah,
I don't think you have
checks
to do
himself.
that. Yeah, because Clark Kent is human. And there is that aspect, and that's always going to be what some people will consider his weakness. But his humanity is not his weakness; it's actually his superpower.
Yeah, I disagree. I think they did have to reduce him because at the point where he was at his strongest, man, he literally they were literally writing new powers for him every issue.
Dude, I dug that stuff. The Superman I grew up on, man. He could solve quantum physics. He could time travel. He could stop the sun. The
most ridiculous picture I ever saw. It's drawn very well because it's John Byrne, but there's a picture of him. It's the Green Lantern Corps basically make a giant chain for him to use, and he wraps it around like a half a dozen planets, and he's just pulling them. He's pulling them through. I'm like, come on, man!
That's Superman, baby. Yeah.
Oh man, I did that stuff, man. And you know what I liked? Was it Morrison that wrote the Superman All-Star?
All-Star, yeah.
Yeah, All-Star. I thought that was great because it brought it back to that like that weird science fiction, like Superman could do anything, and that there were like all kinds of fantastic aspects, like taking Lois and having dinner on the Titanic and just like weird cool shit like that. And I always thought that was one of the things I thought was really fun about Superman as a kid reading the book. And they even brought that into the movie where he flew the opposite way and he stopped time. Like
they reversed it.
I like the way they
reversed it, baby.
Like, see
reverse it. Yeah, exactly. He didn't stop it. He reversed it.
The thing that they did with when Crisis of Infinite Earths, when they actually kind of brought him back down, they knocked him down quite a few pegs. But over time, they've insinuated that level, and obviously a lot of the weird powers went away, but his base powers, that's still unlimited. But he limits him. It's like he has like a mental block that he just limits himself because he's afraid of doing too much.
Yeah, it's Superman. Yeah,
and I like
that's why that's why I can't stand the Injustice run, Bob. I can't. Love you, Mike. Love you. But I can't stand it. That is, you've really screwed yourself with that concept, because Superman checks himself.
Yes.
One of the coolest moments in animation history was when Superman's walking out of a building, he just got punched through, and he comes up, he's talking to Darkseid, I always have to treat the world like it's made out of cardboard, but you can take it, can't you, big guy? And just goes at his ass. That is Superman, dude.
Yeah,
That's Superman.
The reason, the whole reason why Injustice exists is because it's the answer to that question: who would win in a fight, Batman or Superman?
Batman cannot even stand in the same room.
Right.
Don't be near Superman when he farts. There, Batman, you're gonna die.
And we'll see. And every time that Batman has fought Superman and actually won, he's even said, if he wanted to, he could kill me right now. Like Superman could just nuke him from orbit.
Those aren't fun discussions to have.
No. Yeah.
It's absurd to even think about it. The only thing that, like, as far as powers are concerned, and I think it was a John Byrne idea, is that the Invisible Girl or woman actually took down the Hulk temporarily, but she choked him out because she put a force field around him and he couldn't breathe anymore. So if you think about it, there are certain things that the Hulk still has to do, and one of them is breathe. And if he couldn't breathe,
well, it was actually a combination thing, because the Hulk, the thing punched him to knock the air out of him, so that, because if he takes a breath, he can hold his breath for a really
long time. Yeah,
he punched him to knock his breath out, and then she put it around his head and she choked him out.
Yeah, it was one of the smartest things I saw, because I was thinking, like, you couldn't beat him any other way. You can't beat him. You can't beat him up. You can't out punch him, but you could do something like that. And then also, it's always still just a moment in time. It's not going to be a complete victory with a character like that. And Superman, like Batman, could get some blows in, but he's never going to take Superman down. It's
a non-factor.
Interesting. Like, I thought that Frank Miller did it the best in Dark Knight Returns, and we've talked about it on Pontificators. And the thing is, Batman knew going into that fight he wasn't going to take Superman down. The key was he wanted to make him bleed. He wanted to humanize him. He wanted him to feel pain. And to Batman, to Bruce Wayne, that was the key to humanizing him. Basically knocking the humanity back into him. If you can feel pain, you can know what it feels like to be human again. Yeah. So that's all his goal was. And then he staged the heart attack because he knew if the fight continued, Superman would probably end up killing him. So he was just going to bow out of the battle without it ever getting to that point. So it makes Batman look very, very smart. He ends up achieving his goal, but it doesn't go to that extent. Yeah. Zack Snyder, that didn't understand any of that stuff. But that's as close to what Batman could ever do to Superman.
Yeah, and even in the last time that they fought, he's like, every time that he ever has to go up against him, he relies on the fact that no matter what's going on, there's a part of Clark's brain that won't let him go 100%.
Right.
Even when he was being controlled by Max Lord, he wasn't going 100% because there's a part of him that just won't let him do it.
And Bruce is relying on
him being the Boy Scout,
right? Being a decent guy and not going for the kill shot. But like Chester said, if he wanted to, he could take him down in a heartbeat. Hell, if Superman just spit a loogie, he could go through his skull and kill him.
He could just whistle and explode his head.
Yeah.
Remember that ability where he had the ability he could just whistle and just shatter everything around him? Yeah. To give you an idea of just how powerful Superman is.
But I love it. And the thing is, like instead of, as writers, try to depower Superman, get him into situations that he has to use those abilities.
Yeah.
Like, get him in compromising situations where those abilities are needed and he's the only guy that could do it. That's how you write these characters. I hate the new way that they write them. Is they like feel like they need to knock their powers down or their abilities down so that either other characters can shine or it makes it more realistic. And I'm like, if I want reality, I watch the news. You know, I don't want reality. I want fantastic shit to be happening.
True, but I mean that a lot of that has to do with the Marxist mindset that we have going on right now. Everything has to be brought down and made equal to the state, right?
I don't.
You know, just a quick little thing before we get too far away. There, you know, you were talking about how do you fix Captain Marvel? Well, that's actually the easiest thing in the world to do. Just do the Scarlet Witch syndrome. When Captain Marvel was bouncing around with Hyperion, she got infected by an alien entity.
Yeah, it was all a dream. She woke up.
There you go.
Super Snot Rocket. Yeah. I'm going to trademark that checkpoint.
But we're past 2 hours here, guys.
Yep.
We are.
Bob's called it, and that's why Bob gets paid the big bucks. Well, it's good to be back, you guys. It's been a month. Thanks to everybody that has hung out with us in the chat. Do appreciate it. Thank you so much for the super chats. Thanks to all my Pontificator brothers, Comic Bob, Joe Albino Fulton, and Chester Busby III, or Cornelius. Pick whichever one you want.
Cornholio.
And also we had Andy Smith on earlier. He has got a new book on Indiegogo. He is Comicsgate, and it's called First Man. So go check it out. Let's actually see where he's at. Let's do it real quick
right now.
Screen share. Click. Got a new mouse. So you guys should be seeing the campaign. So let me refresh. Let me hit refresh to 43, 103. Yikes, has not moved. So we have not done our job here. So you guys, please go check out First Man. This is Andy Smith's new book. It looks fantastic. He is an A-lister, has done a series of great work for Marvel and DC, and a good guy. So go check that out. And he has delivered multiple campaigns in the past. So you're pretty much guaranteed that you're going to get the product there. So it's not iffy at all. And there you go. It's right there. Click on it. Back a book. All right, you guys. Thanks again. Take care. And hopefully, if everything works out, we'll see you next week. Take care.
Later.